You're tired, not just physically, but in a way that sleep alone can't seem to fix. You lie in bed, eyes open, staring into the stillness of night. Your body begs for rest, but your mind has other plans. It replays conversations, regrets, future fears. The more you want silence, the louder it becomes. And slowly, a thought starts to creep in. Something's wrong with me. I can't even do the most basic thing, sleep. But what if that thought isn't true? What if you're not broken, just overwhelmed? What if the real issue isn't your body's ability to sleep, but your mind's refusal to let go? In modern life, we're taught to fix everything. So when sleep disappears, we treat it like a problem to solve, another thing to master, another task to check off. We push, we try harder, we download apps and read blogs. But the truth is, the more we chase rest, the more it runs from us. Buddhism teaches us something radically different. It says that peace does not come through effort. It comes through surrender. Peace comes from within, the Buddha said. Do not seek it without, and that includes the peace of sleep. This video is not about fixing your sleep. It's about transforming your relationship with rest and with yourself. Through ancient Buddhist insights, modern psychology, and a new way of listening inward, we'll take a gentle journey back to stillness. So before we begin, take a breath. No need to rush. No need to try. This isn't a race to fall asleep. It's a return to yourself. Let's begin, not with doing more, but with letting go. The mind that won't let go. Why we stay awake even when we're tired. You've done everything right. The lights are off. Your phone is silenced. You're lying in bed, hoping, pleading for rest to come. But instead of quiet, your mind grows louder. It replays every unfinished conversation, every task left undone, every worry that's been waiting for nighttime to whisper. You're exhausted, but you can't stop thinking. And maybe, deep down, you wonder, why can't I just shut it off? You're not alone. Millions of people, especially in today's world, lie awake not because their bodies won't rest, but because their minds won't stop. The mind becomes like a browser with too many tabs open. And no matter how tired you are, it keeps clicking from thought to thought, never pausing, never closing. Buddhism teaches that what keeps us restless is not the presence of thoughts, but our attachment to them. We don't just think. We chase thoughts, grab onto them, spin stories around them. We believe that if we think long enough, we'll solve something, control something, avoid something. But all it really does is exhaust us further. The Buddha once compared the mind to a monkey, constantly jumping, never resting. And at night, when all else is quiet, we become painfully aware of that monkey leaping from branch to branch. But the solution isn't to force the monkey to stop. It's to stop following it. Imagine your thoughts as clouds drifting across the sky. You are not the clouds. You are the sky. When you stop chasing the clouds, the sky is still. And in that stillness, peace is possible. One woman once said to me, "It feels like my mind is still trying to finish the day long after my body has let go." That's what the thinking mind does. It tries to stay in control, even when it's time to surrender. But sleep is not something you conquer. It's something you allow. So what if, instead of trying to fix your thoughts, you simply notice them? What if you could say, "Ah, there you are again," and gently return to your breath? No pressure, no judgment, just presence. You're not doing anything wrong. Your mind is just afraid to let go. And tonight, it's safe to rest. Let your breath be the place where the mind finally relaxes. Let yourself be the sky again. Control is an illusion. The more you try, the less you sleep. You want to sleep. You've done everything the books, the podcasts, and the experts say. You've set the perfect environment, cool room, low lights, no screens. You've meditated, counted your breaths, maybe even counted sheep. But still, you're awake. And worse, Now you're frustrated that you're awake. It's the same story every night. You try to sleep before that early meeting. You remember the email you forgot to answer. You think, if I don't fall asleep soon, tomorrow will be ruined. The pressure builds. The tension grows. And once again, sleep disappears. It's a trap almost everyone falls into, believing that sleep is something you can control. But sleep doesn't respond to pressure. Neither does peace. The harder you try, the further it slips away. And that's not because you're broken. It's because the mindset of control creates resistance. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises when we cling, when we grasp at what we want or push away what we don't. We don't just want sleep. We crave it. We fear its absence. We turn it into something to conquer. But rest is not a trophy. It's a natural state. And like water, it flows only when we stop gripping it. There's a story about a man who fell into a river. He panicked, thrashed, tried to swim against the current. The more he fought, the more he sank. But when he stopped resisting, when he let the water carry him, he floated. Sleep is the same. You don't achieve it by fighting. You allow it by softening. As mindfulness teacher Jon Kabat-Zinn said, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. You may have spent years trying to fix your sleep. But what if you don't need fixing? What if the invitation is to stop measuring rest by productivity standards and to remember, rest is not something you earn. It's something you're worthy of. You're not failing because you can't sleep. You're simply being asked to let go. And in that letting go, you'll create the space where sleep can find you again. Peace isn't found, it's invited. We live in a culture that treats peace like a productivity hack, something you schedule in between back-to-back meetings, something you earn after you've answered every email, met every deadline, and checked every box. But the truth is, peace doesn't live on your to-do list. It doesn't arrive when everything is done. In fact, it often waits for the exact moment you stop trying to finish anything at all. Buddhism teaches that peace is not something to be achieved. It's something to return to. It's not a reward for effort. It's a natural state that reveals itself when we stop resisting. And just like sleep, the more we chase peace, the more it slips away. The mind that's constantly searching, grabbing one more tip, one more habit, one more meditation app, may mean well. But peace can't be downloaded. It can't be forced. It has to be invited. There's a quiet difference between trying to be calm and becoming still. One pushes, the other surrenders. One reaches, the other receives. The more we try to fix ourselves, the more we reinforce the idea that something is wrong. But what if nothing is wrong? What if the only thing missing is space? A Zen teacher once said, "When the water is still, the moon reflects." You don't need to chase the moon. You don't need to fix the water. You just need to stop stirring it. Your mind is the same. Peace is already there. It's just waiting for the turbulence to settle. In the words of psychologist Tara Brach, the boundary to what we can accept is the boundary to our freedom. And sometimes, the thing we need to accept most is that peace doesn't respond to force. It arrives through welcome. So tonight, don't try to find peace. Prepare the space. Lower the noise. Breathe slower. And say quietly, "You're welcome here." And if you can do that, even for a moment, you haven't failed. You've remembered something timeless. Let them drift. Stories of real people who found rest. Some people don't lose sleep because of noise or light. They lose sleep because of the stories playing in their heads. Stories of not being enough, of having failed someone, of being behind, of trying too hard and still falling short. These aren't just thoughts, they're weights. And every night, we carry them into bed. James, a software engineer in his 30s, once told me that bedtime felt like clocking in for a second shift, except this one was unpaid and unwinnable. His brain would loop through bugs in his code, emails he hadn't answered, and the haunting sense that he was behind on life. He did everything right. Blue light filters, meditation apps, even military breathing. But sleep never came. Then one night, he stumbled upon a video of a monk who said, "Sleep begins when striving ends." For the first time, James didn't try. He closed his laptop, sat in the dark, and whispered, "I did enough today." His body exhaled. Sleep arrived quietly, like a cat curling up beside him. Linda, a retired nurse, knew how to care for others, but not for herself. After a lifetime of night shifts and caregiving, she found herself wide awake, long after everyone else had gone to bed. She worried about her kids, her aging body, the what-ifs of old age. A friend gave her a visualization. Picture your thoughts like leaves on a stream. Just watch them pass. That night, when the fears returned, she imagined each one as a leaf, floating gently away. She didn't try to silence the river. She just stopped diving into it. Then there's Malik, a warehouse worker and single dad. He wasn't kept awake by noise. He was kept awake by guilt. Guilt for not being present, for missing his daughter's school recital, for eating fast food again because he was too tired to cook. He thought rest had to be earned. His therapist, a mindfulness teacher, once told him, "You don't rest because you're perfect. You rest because you're human." That hit something deep. That night, Malik lay down, placed his hand over his heart, and whispered, "I'm enough for tonight." He slept until sunrise. These stories aren't magic. They don't involve perfect habits or fancy techniques. What they share is something softer: permission. The permission to stop fixing, to stop proving, to stop pushing. The permission to rest, not because everything is solved, but because holding on was never the solution. You may not be a coder, a nurse, or a single parent, but you've likely carried your own version of these burdens. Maybe tonight, the invitation isn't to change anything. It's simply to set it down. Let it drift. Let yourself drift too. Sleep doesn't always come from doing something right. Sometimes it comes from finally doing nothing. Before you sleep, simple Buddhist rituals that change everything. In a world that never stops, bedtime often becomes just another item on our to-do list. We brush our teeth, check our phones one last time, maybe squeeze in a podcast or scroll through emails, all while expecting our bodies to shift magically into sleep mode. But sleep isn't a command we give, it's a space we create. Buddhist monks understand this. Before bed, they don't just clean their bodies, they clear their minds. One monk once said, "Before I rest, I return everything to its place: my robe, my thoughts, my breath." These small rituals aren't superstitions. They're soft landings. They help the mind transition from motion to stillness. You don't have to live in a monastery to practice this. Real people do it quietly, in apartments, in cities, in suburbs. Like Elena, a young mother in Chicago, who used to fall asleep clutching her phone, replaying conversations. She wished she'd handled better. One night, after hearing a talk on mindful rituals, she tried something new. She lit a candle and whispered, "I release today, no apps. No effort, just presence." It became her new rhythm, a doorway into sleep. Another man told me he started visualizing his worries as paper boats on a river. "I still think," he said, "but now I watch those thoughts float away." That's all a ritual is, a pattern that tells your nervous system, it's safe to let go now. You don't need incense or chants. A quiet breath will do. A sentence spoken kindly to yourself. A gesture as simple as placing your phone out of reach and dimming the lights with care. It's not what you do, it's the love you bring to doing it. That's what makes it sacred. And if you forget one night, that's okay. The practice is not about perfection. It's about remembering that sleep is not the end of your day. It's the return to yourself. So tonight, before you close your eyes, don't just fall into sleep. Step into it. Not with urgency, but with intention. Not with control, but with care. And let that care carry you home. Breathe like a monk. Why one breath can heal your night. You lie in bed, and your mind won't stop moving. It jumps from emails left unanswered to tomorrow's tasks to memories you wish you could forget. Your body is still, but inside, everything's running. You've tried everything: white noise, herbal teas, podcasts that promise deep sleep. But there's one thing you may have overlooked: the breath. In Buddhist practice, the breath isn't just a tool, it's a teacher. It doesn't push or pull. It doesn't rush or demand. It simply is. It moves like a tide, quiet, steady, always returning. And when we learn to follow it, without trying to change it, something shifts. The breath doesn't take us to sleep. It takes us to now, and often, that's where sleep has been waiting all along. A Zen monk once said, "If you want to calm the mind, sit with the breath, not to fix it, but to feel it." There's something radical about choosing stillness in a culture obsessed with doing. And yet, that stillness may be the most healing thing you'll ever experience. Haruto, a retired woodworker, used to fall asleep the moment his head hit the pillow. But in his later years, after retirement, he found that sleep slipped further away each night. He tried routines, rituals, even medicine. Nothing worked until a friend told him, "Don't try to sleep, try to breathe." That night, he lay down, placed a hand on his belly, and simply noticed the rise, the fall, the silence between. He didn't force sleep, he invited it. And it came. Modern science is finally catching up. Deep, conscious breathing lowers stress hormones, soothes the nervous system, and signals safety to the body. But even beyond the science, the breath reminds us that we're already enough, already whole, already here. You don't need to breathe like a monk in a cave. You can breathe like someone who's tired of fighting, like someone who wants to come home to themselves. One breath, then another. No effort, no pressure, just the quiet rhythm of being alive. So tonight, if your mind won't rest, let your breath be the place you return to, not to escape the world, but to meet it with a softer heart. Because sometimes peace doesn't begin with a big answer. Sometimes it begins with a small inhale. The body is home, guiding the mind through sensation. Sometimes the hardest part about sleep isn't the body, it's escaping the mind. You're lying in bed, but you're stuck in your head, thoughts bouncing between to-do lists, old conversations, and future worries. You're not moving, but inside, everything feels loud. In those moments, the invitation isn't to escape, it's to return. In Buddhist practice, the body isn't just flesh and bones, it's presence itself. While the mind drifts to yesterday or tomorrow, the body stays here, breathing, listening, waiting for us to notice it again. It doesn't need us to fix anything. It just needs us to feel. The practice is simple. Let the mind rest in the body, one sensation at a time. Not to analyze, not to solve, just to feel what's here. The feet, the knees, the hands, the breath, the heartbeat. As your attention moves gently through the body, the mind follows. Not because it's forced, but because it's finally invited to land. Robert, in his 70s, once said he felt like his mind was a wild horse, running circles around sleep. Nothing worked, until a teacher asked him, "What if your body could lead your mind home?" That night, Robert didn't try to sleep. He scanned through his body slowly, noticing each part like an old friend. It was like finding a quiet cabin in a storm, he told me. And in that quiet, he drifted, not because the thoughts disappeared, but because they didn't matter anymore. Coming back to the body isn't an escape from the mind. It's a reunion with the present, a return to something ancient, steady, and alive. In a culture that teaches us to live from the neck up, feeling your body again is radical. But it's not complicated. It's simply remembering that your body already knows how to rest. So tonight, when your thoughts feel tangled, don't try to untangle them. Let them be. Come back to your hands, your chest, your feet. Come back to the place that has held you through every moment of your life. Come back home and let the body hold the rest. Rest as a spiritual offering. Sleep is part of the practice. In a world obsessed with doing, resting can feel like failure. You lay in bed at night and feel guilty for not finishing enough, not being enough. The to-do list becomes a measuring stick for your worth, and even sleep feels like time wasted if it's not earned. But what if rest was never meant to be earned? What if it's something sacred, something that, like meditation, brings you back to what matters? In Buddhist tradition, rest is not an escape. It's a return, a soft landing, a conscious offering to the present moment. Just as monks bow before a statue or a meal, you can bow to the end of your day. You can close your eyes not in exhaustion, but in reverence. There's an old teaching: a bow pulled too tight will break, a bow too loose won't shoot. Rest is the middle path. It's not indulgence, it's wisdom. Even the Buddha told his monks to rest because he understood that tired bodies lead to restless minds, and restless minds cannot awaken. One woman told me she used to force herself to stay up late finishing tasks just to feel caught up. But no matter how much she checked off, her heart still felt behind. Eventually, her therapist gave her a challenge. Try treating your bedtime like a sacred ceremony instead of a deadline. That night, she turned off her phone, dimmed the lights, lit a candle, and whispered, "I offer this day to rest." She didn't just sleep, she healed. Sleep isn't the opposite of practice. It is the practice. It's where your nervous system rewires, where your thoughts dissolve, and where your spirit resets. You don't need to solve everything before you rest. You don't need to earn peace to receive it. So tonight, don't just collapse into sleep like a battery running out. Step into it like a sanctuary. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop. Let this moment be sacred. Not because you did everything right today, but because you're already enough. Let rest be your teacher. Let sleep be your temple. Because to rest deeply is not to give up, it's to give in. Nothing to fix. How surrender leads to true stillness. Most people don't lie awake at night because their bodies are restless. They lie awake because they're still trying to fix something, some thought, some feeling, some version of themselves they believe isn't good enough yet. But what if the deepest peace doesn't come when everything is solved, but when we finally stop trying to solve it? Buddhist wisdom reminds us, water only reflects the moon when it stops being stirred, and so too with the mind. The stillness we're searching for doesn't come from effort. It comes from release. The quiet that follows when we stop resisting what already is. Modern life teaches us to improve everything. Track it, optimize it, master it. Even sleep becomes another project. One man told me he followed every tip: no caffeine, cool room, smart ring, perfect routine. But night after night, sleep wouldn't come. Until one night, exhausted, not just in body but in spirit, he whispered, "Maybe I don't need to fix this." And in that one breath of surrender, something let go. He didn't fall asleep immediately, but for the first time, he stopped fighting. And that's when rest found him. Stillness doesn't ask for silence. It asks for softness. It arrives when we stop arguing with our thoughts and start holding space for them without needing to change them. It's the gentle knowing, I am here, I am enough. I don't need to get better before I can rest. Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "To rest is not to waste time. It is to nourish life." True surrender is not giving up. It's giving in to this moment, this breath, this body that has carried you through it all. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be met with kindness. And when you do, the stillness you've been chasing will finally come sit beside you. So tonight, no more effort. No more fixing. No, more proving. Just breathe. Let the thoughts be. Let your heart soften. And let peace arrive, quietly, like sleep at the end of a long day. Not because you earned it, but because you remembered you never had to. One whisper before sleep. A final ritual for peaceful nights. There's a moment, right before sleep, that feels like the soft closing of a door. The world quiets, the thoughts settle, and in that gentle in-between, between effort and ease, between holding on and letting go, we're offered a choice, not to do more, not to fix ourselves, but to whisper something kind into the silence. All night, you've traveled inward. You've softened. You've let go. You've remembered that you are not your thoughts, not your tension, not your endless to-do list. You are breath. You are presence. You are enough. Buddhist practice teaches us that the most powerful rituals are often the smallest ones. A single breath, a bowed head, a few words spoken with sincerity. One monk once said, "My entire day ends with a single phrase. Thank you for letting me be." Not a wish, not a prayer, just an acknowledgement that this life, even in its messiness, is worth honoring. So tonight, let that be your practice too. Find your phrase. Maybe it's, "I release this day, nothing to fix, nothing to fear. I am safe, I am home." Say it softly. Whisper it like a secret only your soul needs to hear. Let it float into the night like a lantern on still water. And if this journey tonight has brought you even a little peace, feel free to share it. Someone else might be lying, awake right now, just like you were. You can subscribe to this channel and return whenever you need a reminder to slow down, to breathe, to simply be. We're not here to escape life. We're here to return to it, gently, wisely, together. So tonight, may your rest be deep. May your dreams be kind. And may you wake tomorrow with a little more space in your heart. Not because everything is perfect, but because you remembered you don't have to be.